The morning sun cast long shadows on the immaculate courtyard of Buckingham Palace, where hundreds of visitors gathered to witness the changing of the guard. The magnificent iron gates stood as silent sentinels, their golden tips gleaming against the blue London sky. Amidst the sea of faces and camera flashes, a royal guard stood motionless, his scarlet uniform and bearskin hat a testament to centuries of tradition. His presence commanded respect, each polished button and sharp crease in his uniform telling stories of rigorous training and unwavering discipline. Like a living statue, he remained perfectly still, eyes fixed ahead, as tourists marveled at his dedication. The weight of history rested on his shoulders as he upheld the dignity of the crown, just as countless guards had done before him. A gentle breeze carried whispers of excitement and the occasional clicks of cameras, while the majestic facade of the palace provided a stunning backdrop for this timeless scene. However, something in the air felt different that day, a subtle tension that seemed to herald an extraordinary encounter about to unfold before the gates of Britain's most iconic residence. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to access more stories like this. From the bustling crowd emerged Madison, a self-proclaimed VIP whose designer handbag swung carelessly on her arm. Her high heels clicked against the cobblestones as she strolled through the courtyard, the fluorescent cocktail dangerously, splashing near the edge of the crystal glass. Her perfectly manicured hand held the phone, recording every step of her exclusive palace experience for her social media followers. The loud voice of the 45-year-old American tourist carried across the courtyard as she narrated her live stream, her platinum blonde hair reflecting the sunlight. "Look at this, everyone! Your girl Madison is at Buckingham Palace!" She gestured dramatically to her surroundings, almost spilling her drink on a nearby child. Her designer sunglasses perched atop her head like a crown, a clear statement that she considered herself above the ordinary tourists surrounding her. Madison's behavior drew sidelong glances from other visitors, but she remained oblivious to their disapproval. Her expensive outfit and imposing presence made it clear that she wasn't just here to observe, she was here to be observed. As she approached the restricted area, her red-painted lips curved into a mischievous smile, the kind that suggested she had something particularly amusing in mind. Other tourists began to notice her intentional arrogance towards the guard post, some already pulling out their phones, anticipating what was about to happen. Madison's eyes locked onto the stoic guard, and her smile widened. She had found her target for the day's entertainment. Madison stepped closer to the guard, positioning herself just a few meters away. "Hey, handsome!" she shouted, her voice dripping with exaggerated charm. "Don't! You want a smile for my followers?" She waved the phone, capturing all angles of her performance. Nearby tourists exchanged uncertain glances as Madison began her show. "Oh, come on. Isn't all this serious stuff just an act?" She took another sip of her cocktail and then waved her fingers in front of the guard's face. His expression remained unchanged, eyes facing forward, embodying centuries of disciplined tradition. "I bet I can make you laugh," Madison declared, her voice growing louder. She began to make faces, dancing from side to side, the designer heels scraping against the ground. The guard maintained his composure, remaining as motionless as the palace walls behind him. A boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, whispering, "Why is that lady being so weird?" The mother silently shushed him, pulling him away from the scene. Madison noticed the conversation and rolled her eyes dramatically. "Everyone is so tense here. I'm just trying to add a little fun to this boring job." She moved even closer, the cocktail precariously tilted. "Come on, soldier. Just a little smile for the camera. My followers would love it." The atmosphere around them shifted as Madison's performance continued. What began as light amusement from bystanders quickly turned into visible discomfort. Still, she seemed to thrive on the attention, regardless of its nature, each of her actions becoming bolder than the last. The crowd around Madison grew, forming a semicircle as phones emerged from pockets and bags. Whispers echoed among the gathered spectators, their murmurs of disapproval growing louder with each passing moment. "Is she serious doing this?" a woman in a floral dress murmured to her companion. "Someone should stop her." Children pointed, and parents guided them away, while teenagers captured every moment on their devices. An elderly British gentleman shook his head in disgust, commenting loudly enough for others to hear, "Absolutely shameful behavior." The criticisms only seemed to fuel Madison's determination as she played to her ever-growing audience. "You're all watching this live, people," Madison announced into her phone, turning her back on the guard to face her spectators. "Look how many people are here just to see me work my magic on Mr. Seriously." The cocktail in her hand splashed dangerously as she gestured wildly, droplets of the bright liquid splattering on the floor. A group of Asian tourists exchanged worried glances, their cameras now focused on the unfolding drama rather than the architecture of the palace. Two nearby American college students began recording on their phones, one whispering to the other, "This is definitely going viral." The tension in the air was palpable as Madison's antics escalated. A palace staff member in the distance noticed the commotion and began speaking into his radio, while several visitors tried to signal Madison to stop. But she was too engrossed in her performance, too certain of her supposed immunity to protocol, to notice the shift in atmosphere around her. "Look, everyone, I'm going to make history," Madison declared, her words slightly slurred. She stepped forward, deliberately crossing the rope barrier that separated the tourists from the area designated by the guard. A collective gasp arose from the crowd as her stiletto hit the restricted ground. Madison approached the guard, her cocktail glass now just inches from his pristine uniform. "I bet that outfit cost a fortune," she mused aloud, reaching for the guard's ceremonial sash. The crowd held its breath, dozens of phones capturing the moment. But what happened next sent shockwaves through the gathering. In a sudden move that would soon populate thousands of social media feeds, Madison lost her balance. Whether intentionally or due to her intoxication was still unclear. She stumbled forward, both hands outstretched, and pushed against the guard's chest to steady herself. The impact caused her drink to spill across his immaculate uniform, leaving a glaring stain on the scarlet fabric. "Oops," she laughed, showing no remorse for her actions. "I guess you'll have to move now." The shock of the crowd turned into audible outrage. A child started crying as several onlookers shouted in protest. The sacred boundary between spectator and guardian had been shamelessly violated, and the atmosphere crackled with tension. The guard's previously impassive expression flickered slightly, an almost imperceptible change that signaled the crossing of an unforgivable line. Madison had not only violated protocol, she had committed an act that would have serious consequences. Within seconds, two uniformed palace officers materialized at their posts, moving with swift precision through the stunned crowd. Their faces were stern, their movements deliberate as they approached Madison. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for assaulting a member of the Queen's Guard," one officer announced firmly, his voice echoing through the now silent courtyard. Madison's self-assured smile faltered for the first time. "What? This is ridiculous. I was just having fun," she protested as the officers moved to either side of her. Her phone dropped to the ground as they secured her arms behind her back, the live stream still running, capturing every moment of her downfall. "You can't be serious," she stammered, her designer sunglasses slipping off her head. "Do you know who I am?" The click of the handcuffs echoed against the palace walls, drawing more gasps from the crowd. Her face turned red as the reality of her situation began to sink in. The officers started reciting her rights as they led her away. Madison's high heels clattered awkwardly against the cobblestones as she struggled to maintain her dignity. "This is going to ruin my social media career," she lamented, her mascara beginning to smudge her eyes. The guard remained at his post, the dark stain on his uniform a stark reminder of the incident, but his stance never wavered. As Madison was escorted through the crowd bidding her farewell, her previous bravado crumbled completely. The tourists who had been filming now lowered their phones, struck by the troubling consequences of her actions. As Madison was led through the palace grounds, the gravity of her situation became increasingly apparent. Tourists whispered and pointed, capturing her walk of shame on their phones. "My followers need to know this is a mistake," she shouted desperately, her voice choked. "Someone answer my phone! I need to explain!" But her pleas fell on deaf ears. A palace staff member carefully picked up her fallen phone and designer bag as evidence, sealing them in transparent plastic bags. Inside the palace security office, Madison's behavior changed dramatically. The turbulent social media persona was gone, replaced by a sobbing woman facing serious charges. "I didn't mean to do any harm," she sobbed, mascara running down her face. "It was supposed to be content for my channel." The officers processed her arrest methodically, documenting every detail. They explained that assaulting the Queen's Guard was a serious offense, which could result in hefty fines and potential jail time. Madison's face paled when they mentioned possible immigration consequences and the likelihood of her being banned from entering the UK in the future. As news of the incident spread, Madison's social media accounts exploded with activity. Viral videos showed her actions from various angles, and the comments were extremely critical. Her attempt to create fun content backfired spectacularly, turning her from a self-proclaimed influencer into an international example of tourist misconduct. The following days brought a storm of consequences that Madison had not anticipated. Her story spread across global media with headlines like "American influencer arrested after harassing Queen's Guard" and "Social media stunt goes wrong at the palace." Her name became synonymous with disrespectful tourist behavior, generating countless memes and videos with critical commentary. Back in her small hotel room, released on bail but confined to London while awaiting her court appearance, Madison scrolled through her phone in horror. Her follower count was plummeting, and brands were quickly distancing themselves from her. One by one, sponsorship deals were canceled via concise emails, citing breach of moral conduct clauses. "Due to recent events, we are terminating our partnership effective immediately," read a message from a major beauty brand. Another, from a fashion company, stated, "Your actions do not align with our values." The carefully built career she had constructed over the years was unraveling in a matter of days. Her parents called from Minnesota, and their disappointment was palpable even from across the Atlantic. "We raised you better than this, Madison," her father said wearily. "It's no longer just about your social media career. This could affect your entire future." Her mother's silence during the call spoke volumes. Local British newspapers seized on the story, using it as a springboard for discussions about tourism, respect for tradition, and the influence of social media culture. Madison was portrayed as the personification of everything wrong with modern influencer culture: privileged, disrespectful, and completely disconnected from real-world consequences. Subscribe to the channel and like to access more stories like this. Madison's trial date arrived on a gray London morning. The designer clothes and perfectly styled hair that had been her trademark were gone. Instead, she wore a conservative navy blue suit borrowed from her mother, who had flown in to support her. Her makeup-free face showed the strain of sleepless nights. The courtroom was packed with journalists and onlookers. As the charges were read, Madison trembled. Assaulting a royal guard, disorderly conduct, and violating regulations of protected historic sites. Her lawyer advised her to plead guilty, explaining that the video evidence left no room for denial. "Do you understand the charges against you?" the judge asked, peering at her over reading glasses. "Yes, Your Honor," Madison replied, her voice barely a whisper. She struggled to maintain her composure as the prosecution presented its case, complete with video evidence from multiple angles. The footage, played in the somber courtroom, seemed even more damning than she remembered. The judge's verdict was severe: a substantial fine, suspended sentence, and immediate deportation with a 5-year ban on entering the UK. As an additional requirement, she was compelled to post a public apology video, acknowledging her actions and their consequences. Madison's dreams of international influence crumbled as she realized she was now more infamous than famous, and her name was forever linked to this humiliating incident.